What's up guys, it's Alex the Magician here, back for another video, and in this one we're going to be continuing the Heroes 3 Spells Explained series. So once again, I am for now continuing the daily uploads. I'm not going to commit to doing an upload per day in March, but as long as I can do it, as long as I have good ideas for videos, as long as I feel they're good and, I have time, I don't have to force myself to, not sleep or something like that, then I'm still going to try to upload as often as possible. Anyways, so in this video, we are talking about level 3 spells. So let's just go ahead and get into this. I'm going to try to demonstrate as many of those as possible and also explain them. All right, so first I'm going to talk about two of the best ones. First one I'm going to talk about is forgetfulness. So you can see here that in this fight we lost 5 Cyclops and 1 Wyvern, right? But if we use forgetfulness, we can even click auto combat and we would only lose 1 Wyvern, right? But we can even do better than that. So forgetfulness, if we just fight this right, we would not really lose anything here. We might as well use slow here. And this should be easy from here on. So see, all we lost is a couple of 1-stacks. So a difficult fight became much easier. So forgetfulness is a really, really good spell against ranged units. And it's mostly good against ranged units on the map. The one thing you got to remember with it is that it does not work on, it is a mind spell, so it doesn't work on Titans, and it doesn't work on Liches or undead, power Liches as well. So things like Cyclops, it works really well against. Enchanters it can work against, sharpshooters, things like that. So what it does, it makes ranged creatures forget to attack. So forget to use their ranged attack. At basic level, it makes 50% of them forget to use their attack, so basically they do 50% less damage. At advanced level, at advanced water magic, it will make 1 stack not able to use their ranged attack at all. And at expert, it affects all targets. So actually, it's a really, really good spell to use when you have a break like Cyclops or Cyclop Kings, for example. Like when I have Luna, for example, and I have to face a Cyclop or Cyclop Kings break that I was not able to restart, then I'm automatically thinking Mage Guild level 3 and Forgetfulness, because as Conflux, you can also buy Water Magic in the Magic University, right? So really good spell to use in those situations, can be really, really helpful. Against a human opponent, not really. It's usually not going to help you that much, but yeah, against a break like Cyclops or Cyclop Kings, very useful. Okay, so the next one I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like, and I'm going to kind of discuss it. So it's anti-magic. That's probably the other best spell in Mage Guild level 3. I would say Forgetfulness and anti-magic are the two best ones. So anti-magic protects you from magic. I see you can probably tell by the name. And at basic level, it protects you from up to level 3 magic, advanced level, level 4, and expert level, level 5. So it protects you from all magic. You can only target allied troops with it, and it will also remove negative effects. So if you are already slowed or something like that, it will remove those effects as well. And it will not remove positive spells. So if you're if you can cast haste or something like that on your Wyvern and then do anti-magic, then they will still be hasted. It'll remove the negative spells. However, once you actually cast anti-magic, you will not be able to buff the anti-magic creature anymore, and you will also not be able to use things like resurrect on it. So be careful with it. It can, however, be removed by Expert Dispel. So at Expert Dispel, anti-magic can be removed by your opponent. And it will also protect you from spell casting, like, let's say, magic from the fairy dragons and whatnot. So, that is the way anti-magic works. Now, I'm gonna really quickly just talk about and demonstrate the other two damage spells. These are pretty straightforward, so Fireball and Frost Ring. They can be okay. These are basically the only damage spells in level 3 magic. They are area of effect, small area of effect, so it affects like a... It affects 7 hex radius like this. So usually you can hit 2, maybe 3 creatures with it, depending on, if you can hit it something like this, you can hit up to 7 targets with it. So it can be useful in certain cases for removing 1-stacks, for example, like let's say something like this, right? And I am my opponent, let's say this was actually an opponent, and he was trying to close the gap, so instead of having to kill these 1-stacks with these unicorns, you could just use Fireball like this, and boom, kill all of these guys, right? So, and Frost Ring is basically the same thing, only it is, ice. And it, for whatever reason, well, because it's a ring, it doesn't affect the center hex. It affects the hexes on the outside of the center from where you cast it. So, those are the damage spells. Like I said, usually you're not going to use them unless you need like an easy and cheap way to clear away 1-stacks. Alright, so next, really quickly, I'm going to show you guys Earthquake. So Earthquake, basically, the only use for it is destroying castle walls, right? So it looks pretty cool. You can see right there by using it, I already destroyed all of the walls. If there's citadel and castle built, it would destroy not as much as this, but it can help in certain cases. Like it can help if you only have pedestrian units and you really need to close the gap, and he has archers. So in those cases, it may be able to help. Usually does not come into play that often. So it's there. If you don't have any better options, you can use it, but usually you will have better options. Alright, next I'm going to talk about Air Shield. So Air Shield is basically it's a better version of Shield versus ranged creatures. So at Expert level, it's an air spell, and at Expert level, it protects you from 50% of ranged damage. So this is what it looks like. Pretty interesting spell to use if you don't have any other better options, but if you have to fight a nasty ranged block or ranged breaks or something like that, and you can't get forgetfulness, or you don't have any other better options, well, 50% reduction in damage is pretty good. So it's definitely something that you could use against neutral creatures. Doesn't come in handy as often against an actual human opponent, but you could potentially utilize it against a human opponent that has a lot of ranged units. I can see it happening. I just haven't really seen it that much in PvP scenarios, because usually you will have better options. Like even forgetfulness would be a better option, right? So next I'm going to talk about Destroy Undead, and it's funny that nobody reminded me. I forgot to talk about Death Ripple during my level 2 spells video, and Death Ripple and Destroy Undead are basically opposites, right? So Death Ripple does a little amount of damage to every target on the field, every living target, but also it does damage elementals. So I think Undead are the only things that are actually immune to it. Undead and dragons, and also magic elementals. But elementals are somehow... It's kind of weird, because the description of Death Ripple says that it damages all living creatures, but elementals are non-living, but it's still, and like gargoyles, for example, are also non-living, but it does damage them. It will damage golems as well. So kind of a weird description there that can kind of confuse people, but yeah, it damages everything except for dragons, undead, and magic elementals. And Destroy Undead is like the opposite, but it damages only undead, right? So it can help. Basically, the use of both Death Ripple and Destroy Undead is to clear one stack. So, like, if your opponent is attacking you with 7 one stacks, and you just want to clear them on one turn because you're afraid of an Arma Bomb or something like that. If they're living or elemental, then use Death Ripple, right? If they're undead one stacks, you can use Destroy Undead. So basically, that's the way that those spells work. All right. Now, as far as Hypnotize goes, Hypnotize is something that can come in handy, but it is not necessarily, you don't see it that often. So it basically lets you control a unit. The reason you don't see it that often is because you cannot control a very powerful unit, right? But if you need to, for example, control like a stack, that is not necessarily super strong, but it's your opponent's move and it's a fast stack, you can control it, take retaliation with it from your opponent, and your opponent loses his first turn doing that as well. So I actually have won a game like that. I had Hypnotize. I was able to hypnotize Nefrit Sultan on my opponent's end, and that took away his first move. It allowed me to take retaliation from his stack, kill the Ifrit Sultan with the retaliation that it took, and then I was able to finish him quickly because, he didn't get his first turn. So it can come in handy, but again, you don't see it that often just because it is not that powerful. You cannot bind, something like 10 angels. You would need a million spell power to actually bind. So. All right, landmine. I'm going to show you guys really quickly. Oh, yeah, so somebody actually pointed this out. This works for quicksand and landmine. Creatures that are on native terrain can see it. So this is why I actually cannot cast it. So both quicksand and landmine are kind of similar. Landmine only places mines that actually damage whatever is walking on them, when it actually steps on them. But creatures that are on native terrain can see it. And actually, if your opponent has a creature that in his army that is on native terrain, on its own native terrain, then he will be able to see those landmines and the quicksand. So that is actually how these creatures, when you fight them, how the AI cheats basically, and they see your quicksand and landmines because they're on native terrain. So that's something that I actually did not know. All right, as far as Misfortune goes, not a great spell, so I'll just show you guys what it looks like. I mean, you basically reduce the luck of whatever you cast it on. At expert level, it affects all targets. Not a great spell, really. You're almost never going to use it, so just, go ahead and forget about that one. Alright, Teleport is a pretty cool one. It can help in certain cases. So basically, it allows you to instantly move a creature anywhere on the battlefield. At expert level, it will also allow you to move across castle walls. At basic level, it doesn't allow you to do that. So it can be good when you really need to close the gap. So it's really good when combined with slow units. Like, for example, if you are Necro and you're fighting skeletons against, like a ranged power stack or a ranged break, it can be really useful. If you are Fortress and you have Hiders or Chaos Hiders and you use them to close the gap and use their multi-directional attack, that can be really useful. So in those cases, sometimes Teleport can be game-winning. Usually, it's not going to matter that much because you'll usually have flying units like Wyvern or Angels, or you'll use Mass Haste or something like that. But in certain situations, Teleport can come in handy. Alright, next Mirth. I'll just show you guys what it looks like. Essentially, it just increases your morale. It can help, especially if you're dealing with bad morale. At expert level, it increases your morale by 2. And at expert level, it will affect all of your creatures, right? So not a bad spell. Usually not something that you're going to be too happy about casting, but you can certainly utilize it. Alright. Next, force field. I have demonstrated this in my Heroes 3 cheats video. Basically, it can be really, really useful if you have a range stack and you're fighting something on your opponent's end that is not a range stack and you don't want it to close the gap. So against 2 hex units like Wyvern, it would work really well. And in certain cases, it can work against 1 hex units as well. If I place the force field like this, it lasts for 2 rounds, right? And it can basically be a loop, like a blind loop that you can just continue to use and, you know, just hit your opponent, just continue to do that unanswered range damage as long as your units outspeed the units of your opponent, because you will need to recast the force field as soon as it disappears in 2 rounds, right? And if your opponent gets first move at the beginning of that round, the force field disappears and he will be able to close the gap. So you would need to make sure that you either slow your opponent's creatures or haste your own, but it can definitely win you games as well. So pretty interesting spell. Alright, and Protection from Earth. This spell can also come in handy. I would say it's the best out of all the protection from element spells. At expert level, it protects you from 75% of earth spell damage, and it affects all your targets at expert level. So imagine reducing your opponent's implosion damage by 75%. That can be really good if your opponent's most damaging spell is implosion or he doesn't have any other damaging spell. So just show you guys what it looks like that. And yeah, it's something that definitely is utilized in some cases, especially when you're trying to protect against implosion, you know, meteor shower and things like that. So, and it affects all of your targets, right? So let's say you have many power stacks, or you know, you have like Cyclops, Wyvern, Angels, whatever, and you don't just want to anti-magic one of them, you want to protect all of them from a possible implosion, right? Then you do Protection from Earth, and while it doesn't protect you completely, it reduces the damage by a lot. So, decent spell to utilize in situations where you are afraid of your opponent using Earth spells. Alright guys, well that's it for the level 3 spell guide, and if you guys think that I missed something or I made a mistake in explaining something, do let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope that you found this video useful, and stay tuned for more videos. Also, as always, check out my Twitch stream, link in the description below, if you're interested in more Heroes 3 English-speaking content. Alright guys, I am out, and hopefully I will see you guys soon. Peace.